What's up, everybody? We got 10 minutes to talk about red dots at an angle on rifles, aka offset red dots. This was a request from a listener in our Instagram DMs on at Vortex Nation Podcast on Instagram. We have Reuben Allison and we have Adam Maxwell here to discuss. If you're watching on YouTube, the table has 4 very cool looking carbines on top, all of which have razors actually at 45s. So let's talk about them. Did this start kind of in competition? Because we have a couple of rifles here that are kind of competition rifles.
Well, I think a lot of it goes back before there were a lot of viable options in the 1 to 6, 1 to something power magnification. Because guys were shooting either competitions or duty based, whatever it is. They're needing the ability to be up close and personal, have 1 power, but then also having magnification for longer distance engagements. So I think that's a big part of it. Adam may be able to speak a little bit more.
Yeah, if you rewind maybe like 10 years ago, a lot of the common usage optics that were being used on carbines were fixed power optics. So they were fixed at 3, 4, 6, something like that. And so guys
like prism
using
type
them,
optics.
Yeah, so guys using them for duty type use, they still needed a CQB type option. They needed to take a point blank shot. And so I think that's where a lot of the top mounted red dots came from, and then the cheek weld really sucks for that. So somebody got the idea to put it on the 45 so that they can just roll the gun on its axis, and then see a different sighting system. So
right,
and then I think it got really popular in competition, where match directors would start putting targets at different distances, so that competitors would want to be on different powers on their variable power scopes. So guys, instead of turning the mag ring, they would toggle between sighting systems. They could have the scope set up, and then they'd have
simply by turning the rifle, essentially.
Yep.
And I feel like, so for those who haven't seen a setup like this before, I mean, we're talking about you have your top rail of your AR-15. In this case, these are all AR-15 style platforms. You have your top rail, your optic is mounted right above the receiver. And then with what remaining pick rail space you have, there's another mount that does an offset. It pushes the dot out to the side and at a 45-degree angle. So like you said, it's still on the same axis of the barrel because the barrel is circular. But now you just rotate the gun slightly at a different angle, and now actually a whole nother secondary optic then comes into your view, and you've sighted that in separately to account for. Do people sight it in for different distances, or is it usually the same distance? It's just the fact that it's 1x instead of whatever x your other optic is at.
I'd say there's varying schools of thought on that. I zero them both at the same distance, so I zero both at 50 yards, so the holds are the same. Initially, I tried sighting it in much closer, but then you're at a very curved part of the bullet's trajectory, so your hold over, hold unders are really weird if you sight your dot in for like 15 yards. It's really only on at 15 yards, and then it's like 6 inches off at 20 yards. And
gotcha.
That's an over-exaggeration, but it's the trajectory at those distances isn't very predictable, so I usually zero it at the same distance.
Yeah, and these things are almost entirely based on like a desire to have speed, right? So quick target acquisition, and then rapid engagements, rapid transitions from one target to the next. So when you get to that point, like you're like, I guess like keyholing accuracy isn't necessarily the most important part. It's you're focusing on speed. Okay. A lot of times on a 45, you'll see a larger dot size. Like a Razor 1 to 6 has like a half MOA center dot, but these were using either a 3 or a 6 MOA dot, which is considerably larger. That being said, you can pick it up a lot faster. One other thing that's worth mentioning is a lot of these mounts, I'd say the majority right now are 45 degree. So you would roll the rifle at a 45 degree angle. That way you can still maintain somewhat of a viable, shoulder position when you pull the rifle up. You're not taking it completely off of your shoulder. There are some at 37 degrees, which are actually becoming more and more popular. But
interesting. Yeah. Just kind of like these 2.03 height mounts.
2.04, 193.
Starting to tweak with ergos and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I think is interesting, too, is in competition, you'll see guys like Josh Freilich, who we had on the podcast a while back and talked about this. Your PCC over here has not 1, but 2 red dots on it.
Yep.
And your primary in this case is a red dot, so it's basically 1x or 0x or whatever you want to say. And then, of course, the optic that you have it on offset is also a red dot. They're actually the same red dot. So in this case, you're not doing it because you want to switch from 3, 4, 5, 6 power to 1 power. you're actually doing it for the ergonomics of actually turning the rifle, right?
Yeah, if you to best explain it, if you're forced to shoot around some sort of barricade, a wall, any type of thing, whether it be in a real life thing or whether it be in a competition, when you're shooting to a tight angle on your strong side, so if you're right-handed, if you're hanging strong to the right, it's easier to roll the gun and aim like that than it is to try and turn your whole body this way.
Yeah, you wind up having to, if you just were using the primary optic on top, you're craning your whole body around it to still try and stay behind that primary optic, whereas it's a lot easier to just turn the gun, and you don't have to.
It's one of those things, too, and I will say it, you won't see it till you try it. So try it before you diss it, because it seems very counterintuitive and kind of nichey, but it is the reason why most guys in the competition circuit have 2 dots on their PCCs.
Yeah.
Now, is running a red dot on offset going to get you killed in the streets?
No, I don't think so at all.
Because one of these or 2 of these here are duty rifles or style or set up that way.
Well, like we were talking before we hit the go button here, we were actually visiting with a group under SOCOM, let's say. We did a demonstration for them, and that was a big majority of the questions they asked were about 45-degree dots. So they're very common, or they're very desirable and common in that arena. A lot of times because they're putting them on designated marksman-type rifles with higher power scopes.
Oh.
But in roll, they usually have to clear out the building that they're going into to get to the hide. So they wanted a CQB type of optic, and then their primary optic for what the rifle's primarily for is a more intermediate to long range type application.
Yep.
So they can go into a house and be in a stack with guys and have a red dot to use. And then when they get up to the top floor and do Overwatch, they have their higher magnification optic.
Yeah, and it's no changing around of the gun. The gun is set up as is. Once you're up there shooting longer distances or mid distances, that you just ignore the red dot.
Right.
That's pretty
That's
slick.
a huge application right now, is on like the SPR, DMR type rifle. If you pay any attention to like social media where they're taking, like real life pictures of stuff getting used, you see that all the time with like a 2.5 to 10 or a fixed 10 power, but then a red dot on a 45.
Very interesting.
I think also in tactical applications, as the concept evolves and competitors have innovated the shooting around corners aspect of it and are making it more of a viable option. I think also physiologically or athletically, it opens up your posture a little bit more for more dynamic shooting. So instead of being tucked in while you're running, like usually you run like this, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were going to shoot and run, you can also just bring the gun up and it's more natural to the way you shoot instead of having to tuck your elbow and get the gun straight up.
I'm following.
So I think I haven't really put it on the clock yet, but I would imagine, especially if you start wearing armor where you start to get bulkier and less mobile, I think if you were to just present a 45-degree dot to off of a stimulus to a first shot, I would venture a guess that the 45 is actually faster than the traditional 12 o'clock because you don't have to tuck your elbow as much.
Yeah. Now, another area I've seen people use it, as we have a minute and a half left, is hunting sometimes. I've seen predator hunters use this. And, Rube, you've done some predator hunting. Have you done it or used it, or what's the use there?
Yeah, we went out to Wyoming this winter, and actually I took this rifle, had a bipod and a suppressor minus the lights and lasers, but same rifle, same optics setup, and it's extremely nice when you're, at least what I've found doing some predator hunting, like very rolling country. Like you might see a coyote come up over the top of a hill and then he disappears behind the next ridge, and you're expecting him to pop up over the next ridge.
You
and
haven't
he pops
changed
up,
the magnification of your scope, probably.
right? And he pops up 40 yards to your right, and you're still on 6 power on your optic. So instead of having to go and flip your throw lever back to 1 power, you already have that optic ready to go, and you can literally just turn and make the shot.
I like it. So offset red dots, they can help ergonomically, especially with it. They're primarily for quickness, right?
Yeah, speed.
Ergonomics, speed, allowing you to essentially have, like if you run it with a 2 to 10, for example, you almost just turned it into a 1 to 10.
Yeah, and one other thing too is awesome is it's a backup sighting system, so it's your secondary sighting system in case something happens to your first.
Good point. Look at that. 10 minutes. I'm sure other people will have more questions on this, so please feel free to ask. And if you use an offset red dot, we want to hear about it. Show us pictures and let us know how you use it. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Bye.
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 That was good.
Good.
10 minutes. I liked it.
Cool.
If anything, people will ask more questions, and it could be a longer podcast too. The only question I didn't ask that I was hoping to ask, but it's for another time. When you mount it on the handguard back on the receiver, do you notice anything like any ill effects?
Depends on the handguard.
Yeah, it depends on
Totally
the handguard.
depends on the handguard.
100%.
Like these are completely like integrated, made for this receiver. Same with that, like it's made for that receiver.
Yeah.
But you go into kind of a Franken build, where your handguard isn't necessarily on the same plane, or it's like lower,
And
or
it's
it's just
made
not
for each
sturdy.
other.
Yeah, you can see some zero issues, but typically it's not enough to notice. With
Especially if
the
you're right
accuracy.
over the barrel. You're not getting a whole lot of flex right over the barrel nut, even if this flex is a lot out here. So the more centralized it is.
I actually personally like it back here. I've shot with them quite a bit up here. I like it back here because it's like you got like this roll cage, like this optic roll cage, your charging handle. Like it's kind of everything is protected in here. It's not necessarily like out and proud.
Yeah, I just started playing with it out front there. I had a lot of congestion around the charging handle, like it was kind of in my way. So I was playing around with it out there, but it is bulky.
Well, and so like for you, right? Like you have not only your like optic here, you have a forward assist that gets in your way on most guns.
Yeah.
So like your charging handle area is very congested, whereas as a righty, typically it's not a problem.
Yeah. I dig it. Thanks, guys.
Try this though.
Leaning around.
Yeah, so stand like right there.
To me, this is just something that that made sense right off the bat, because you're like straight
So
on.
aim at one of those black dots on the bricks.
Right, and if I'm trying to use my main, I'm doing that.
Yep.
But then if I'm using the offset, it's way less.
You're not in bendy.
And it actually happens when you have two red dots and they're both
Mhm.
open tops. It actually kind of happens. I didn't even notice the
No.
transition, which
No.
was weird. Like I didn't
Yeah.
even notice that I went from one optic to another. It just looked like the red dot was just.
Oh, I have all the time, like I have video from the PCC championship shooting that thing, and I have video where like I'm using the same target array, and as I like go like this, so I'm like moving, targets are over there, I'm moving that way. I've had it where I've been like boom, 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 boom.
You just kept shooting.
I just rolled it over like that as I got to these targets over here. So I have a video of me doing that. It's natural. I'm not thinking
It very much is. I wasn't expecting it to be that natural. That's cool.
And when I started playing with it too, like I found that you don't even really need to roll the gun. You can just kind of like peek around the side, and you get the dot out of the corner of the window.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do the dramatic roll. You can kind of just. It doesn't
that's
take
cool.
much before you can see it.
I like it. People like that one. That'll be a good one. Like I said, we might have to talk about it more.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.